This is one of the biggest mistakes you're making when starting an AI automation agency, and you probably don't even know you're doing it. My name's Yash, and I run an AI automation agency called Pluto AI. We essentially service a whole bunch of different clients in a bunch of different industries, and we've currently scaled our AI automation agency to over $20,000 a month. And we've been doing this for about a year and a half. And what I've learned is starting an AI automation agency is one of the most profitable business models in 2025. This is because there's a massive skill shortage for people that know what we do. So the main premise of what we do is we help businesses implement AI. This will help them save time, increase revenue, get them a good return on investment from our services. And we're at such an exciting time now, because if you're watching this video, you're probably super early on the AI space of what it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, when everyone knows it's going to blow up, but no one knows exactly what to do and how to implement AI. And that's why we become the experts in how to do it. And then we sell those services to businesses. And it's super, super profitable. And one of the main problems I see when people try to start their AI automation agency, and why sometimes people fail, is because people just overcomplicate it, right? They focus on the latest AI tools instead of actual business problems. When a client comes to you and they're like, hey, I've got this problem to solve, you don't want to use a tool that you already know and make it fit and force it to fit. You should have a library of tools that you can use, just like a builder has a bunch of tools, right? They have a digger and a drill. They're not used for the same problem when building a house. The same way when you're building a solution, you need to pick the right tool and then mold that tool to the solution that you're fixing for the business owner. And as I'm sure you know, you're probably super overwhelmed by all the different AI tools out there. Quite honestly, you probably only need 5 or 10 in your back pocket to solve 99% of the business problems. And of course you have to stay up to date, but in the AI space, we have something called called shiny object syndrome. And this is when a new AI tool comes out and everyone goes and there's a bunch of hype on it and then it dies down. And you don't want to waste your time learning, all these different AI tools and not knowing how to apply them to business problems. So what I recommend is you have 10 of some of the best AI tools, in your back pocket, such as Make.com, NA10. Make sure you learn how to prompt using OpenAI and Claude. If you have these basics down, then you'll pretty much be able to build anything you want. So in this video, I'm going to break down the mindset you need to start an AI automation agency, because there is so much fluff and so much stuff going on within this space. I'm going to show you how you can narrow down to exactly what you need to actually run your agency successfully. So if you want to start your own AI automation agency, this is where you begin. So let's shift over to the next slide. So the right mindset for automation. So one of the biggest problems that people do is they start with a tool instead of a problem. So what this means is essentially they know this tool really well and it's got a bunch of hype around it, like DeepSeek when it came out, there's Manus currently, and there's a bunch of other AI tools that get a bunch of hype around them. And when a business owner comes to you for a solution, you need to make sure that solution is robust. You don't want it to break every 2 minutes, because that's going to cause more problems for the business owner before they hired you, right? You want to make their lives easier and you want to show good return on your automations. So make sure you know a core set of tools, and then when a business owner tells you a problem, you're like, that tool would apply well. Rather than starting with a tool and then trying to force it to fit a problem, start with the problem and then get a tool to make it work. Honestly, businesses don't care if you use AI, Make.com, NA10. What they care about is results. They care that you've alleviated this pain from, what they used to have. They don't care whether you use the latest AI tech or not. As long as it solves a problem for them, that's all that matters, right? So you've always got to have this sort of idea and goal in your head. Your goal is to identify inefficiencies, which are normally what business owners have as problems, stuff that's costing them too much money. They're not able to scale without hiring a bunch of people. These are inefficiencies within their business that you're there to solve, and that's how you're going to make them money. And ultimately, some of that money gets sent to you as well, right? And you want to automate them in the simplest, most cost-effective way. Typically, super big, complex automations break. It's just fact, right? There's too many moving parts. When you have 100 different moving parts, unless you build them really well and you spend a lot of time doing them, they're more likely to break, right? It's just how the world works. And also, massive and complex automations are really expensive to run. Normally, what I found is we build out an automation and might have 500 make modules in it, for example. We try cut it down to 100, makes it more cost effective, and also the automation's way less likely to break. At the end of the day, what you are is a problem solver, right? We might consider ourselves AI automation experts because it sounds sexy, right? It sounds cool. Oh, I use AI and I use automation. These are all things that, people love to hear and they want it as part of their business. But what you are down to the core is a problem solver. You're just a person that solves problems using AI and automation. It's just a tool you're using to solve it. That's the mindset you should go in when you're building out automations, so your clients are always really happy with the automations you provide. And this next point that I'm going to show you on this slide over here is super important when you're pitching new automations, right? Businesses only care about how much money it's going to save them, how much time it's going to save them, because time kind of equals money. They pay their employees. And if you can save their employees time, that ultimately saving money. So it all comes down to how much money you can save these businesses. If it doesn't save money, and it doesn't save time, or it doesn't add extra money to their business, then quite honestly, the automation you built, to be quite blunt, is useless, right? You have to think business first and then tech second. Think about what the automation you're going to build and how it's going to impact, rather than, oh, this automation is cool in practice and it's like a cool thing to have, but is it really that useful? You see this a lot on YouTube, right? People build out, and I do build this out too because it does well on views, but really, if a client asked me to do this, I'd really question it. And it's essentially an NA10 AI agent, right? And I hook it up to a Google Calendar, I hook it up to a Gmail node, and then, we kind of build out this AI agent that's kind of like a personal assistant. And when I come to think of it, how much time is this actually going to save a business? How much effort is this going to save a business? Probably not a lot. When I actually think about, I've never had anyone come up to me and say, hey, I want an AI personal assistant, because it's just not something that's super high leverage, right? You can charge $5,000-$6,000 for an AI personal assistant, but really it still doesn't do everything a normal personal assistant would do. So in my opinion, it's not really commercially viable. It's really cool to show on YouTube, but don't get sucked into that thing where people are like, oh, let me build out this AI personal assistant and try and sell it to people. Because it likely won't work because there's no return and people don't see value in it, so therefore they're not going to want to pay you for it. That's just one example off the top of my head. There are hundreds of different automations I've seen online that are cool in practice, and they're really good to help you learn how to build automations that are useful. But in reality, to sell them to businesses is a little bit more difficult. So again, just drilling into your head, make sure that the automation you're building provides good return for these businesses. If it doesn't, then it's pointless in building. All right, let's flick over to the next slide. So this one is about how to approach building automations. So the first thing you need to do is understand the manual process. So you need to ask the business how they do this, right? They can say, oh, I go into my Google Calendar, I go and send an email, blah, blah, blah. They'll give you like a whole process on how they do this on a call. And one thing I recommend is you have an AI note taker in your call. It's saved me so much time of writing notes, and you can ask a bunch of questions. I use fireflies.ai. It's a brilliant AI note taker, and it has this great thing called Ask Fred, and you can just chat with the meeting notes itself and get a bunch of information, like give me a step-by-step on what the client said in this meeting for their process, and it'll literally give you the process step-by-step. But make sure you get their process down to a T. And once they've told you that, you can automate the process as it is, as long as it's working. So if the client comes to you and say, this process works amazing, I enrich leads in X, Y, and Z way, and it works really well, and this is the output we're getting. But it takes 3 staff every single day to enrich the massive lead list we have. Then you can go to them and be like, brilliant, we can automate this for you, and we can do it exactly the same way your staff are currently doing it. We'll just get a robot to do it instead. If it means having to go to ChatGPT, type in where can I find these leads, go to Perplexity next, you can automate all these tasks using the APIs in Make.com, right? So the same way, you can go and automate their existing tasks. Don't try and change their process unless you can see clear inefficiencies. That's like a big asterisk. Obviously, if the process is like they're going through steps they don't need to go through, you can streamline it. But make sure that you don't veer too far from their process because it's working, right? And what I notice is when we veer too far from the company's process, it normally gives a different output to what they're used to or what they actually want. And then what's the point in building the automation if it's not going to work and give them exactly the type of details they want? For example, if we're doing a enrichment automation like I just mentioned, then if the email is going to be different to how they would do it manually, and the one that they did manually was the correct email, for example, for that lead, then why would they use us? They would rather just do it manually and get the correct data. So that's why I always recommend you stick to the client's existing process unless there's clear inefficiencies, or you might need to change a couple things to, make it fit in an automation scenario rather than a manual scenario. So the goal isn't to change everything and completely revamp their processes. It's normally to make it scalable, cheaper, and more reliable and repetitable on a normal basis. And when you're building out these scenarios, work backwards from the outcome. The outcome is one of the most important things to businesses, right? They really want you to, whatever you're automating, whatever happens at the end. So you put an input into your automation and then there's an output on the other end. What your automation is essentially a system. Whether it's an AI agent, then you're typing in some instructions for it to do, and then it outputs you in whatever instructions you've given it in scenario, or if you're building a make.com scenario, which is a lot more linear compared to the N8N scenario I just mentioned, then of course, it will go through all the different nodes you have, and then it'll pop out with a different, it'll pop out with a different output, essentially. What you're building are systems. So that output is super important because it needs to be valuable to your client. So you need to reverse engineer the steps from what your output was and whatever input they put in, and then build a system around that. You want to make sure the output is the best quality so they come back to you for more automation. That's a number one rule. So that's why we always work backwards from the outcome. Again, don't think what tool should I use, ask what needs to happen first. This leads to a structured, scalable and useful automation. So for example, one of our clients, right, they are an SEO agency and they wanted a backlink automation. So they had all these different blog articles, and what they used to do is they had a bunch of clients, right? And these clients have their own websites and they have a directory where they upload different blogs that are SEO optimized. And essentially they needed an automation where it would automatically put backlinks into their blogs, because they used to spend a lot of time going to the client's website, typing in all the different pages they have, and then, copying those links and then tagging it into their SEO optimized article they're uploading to their directory. So they wanted that whole thing automated. So this is where we thought backward from the outcome. This is a real life automation scenario, by the way. So we thought the outcome is they want an article generated with a bunch of links. So what do we need to get this done? So what we're going to need is links from the actual client's website. Awesome. How do we do that? We need to get the actual article, which was already generated. So that's a problem solved. We need to make sure that there's a way we can match the links to the actual blog article, right? And make sure that, the links are put in the correct places and hyperlinked. So this is how we did it, right? So we thought, how do we get the links? Well, you can scrape the website from the client. So we're matching a problem to a tool, right? So scraping is a tool. We could do it on make.com, N8N, pretty much anywhere, any of these automation tools, you can scrape things. So now that we got the links that we scraped from their website, we need to make sure that these links match up to their actual article that we generated. So we have the links and we need to create a description for them. So we'll have an AI essentially look through, how links are like plutoai.io/automation. So these websites had a bunch of slashes and then what the topic page was. So we had AI extract those different topic pages and put them all into like a neat type of file. And this one will say, like, for example, automation and then plutoai.io/automation and then plutoai.io/make.com. And then it'll have a make.com description essentially. Say we're writing a blog for Pluto AI. All right. And then we need to link those blogs, we need to link those links to the blog. And then AI can match those two together because it's a pretty smart tool, right? And it does a lot of the heavy lifting, and it'll auto put those backlinks into the blog. So really, it was just matching tools to, to the problem that we're facing, and we're working from the outcome backwards, essentially. All right, and the next slide here is really important. It's kind of a thing we learned the hard way. If you don't do this process, which is don't automate a broken process, if you go and try and automate a broken process, an automation that should take you 2 to 3 weeks will end up taking you 2 to 3 months. This happened once, and essentially it was a really hard lesson to learn because, we end up having to spend a lot more time automating something. And because we used to work on a project basis, it's not like the client's paying us any more for it. So it was a hard lesson to learn, and I'm glad to be teaching it now to other people so they don't make the same mistake we did. It's the best part of learning, right? So an automation won't fix a bad system. This is why I made sure in a previous slide that I just showed you, I said, make sure that the client has an automation that works, right? If they don't have an automation that works, you can create a process that would work, using logic. But if they if they say, yeah, we have a system, but it doesn't work super well, then don't just go, oh, nice, what's your system? How do you do it? And then just automate that. Because you're just going to get a system that doesn't work, and automation scales things. So you're just going to have, before they used to do it manually, where they used to do it partially and, a little bit half-heartedly, essentially. And when you automate something, you can infinitely scale it. So if they already have a system that's causing problems along the way, and then you go and automate that system, your problem's just going to be 10 times bigger than what it was before for the business itself. So you need to make sure that you need to make things more scalable and save time, but automating a broken process won't help you do that. If the process is inefficient or unclear, you need to make sure you fix it before automating. You need to sit down with that client and tell them, okay, Why isn't this process working? And then from there, they'll tell you, oh, maybe because, the emails from our enrichment process, just like the one I mentioned before, oh, they're correct only 20% of the time. So you can be like, how did you get the emails? Brilliant. And then you might have a tool in the back of your head, or you might have to do some research to realize, okay, so they might be getting the emails from, Perplexity, and Perplexity isn't giving out great emails. Then you can go and say, oh, we can perhaps use ChatGPT instead, for example. It's not a great example, but you kind of get the point, right? And another thing is, if you're building out a massive workflow that's super complicated, then mapping out your workflows will save you 10 times the amount of time for complex workflows, because you cannot physically keep all the different variables and all the different pathways in your head when you're trying to automate something super complex. This is normally for like automations that cost, anywhere up from like $8,000 onwards. For our agency, we always map it out because they're normally super complex and they have numerous different logic and numerous different pathways, and you absolutely need to map it out. I'm just going to reiterate one more time, because this is where most people that start an AI automation agency normally don't succeed in doing. And this is, every automation should save time or money. And this is the biggest point I just want to hammer home every single time. And this is just because if it doesn't save time or money, what's the point in building the automation if you're going to try to sell it to businesses? That there is no point. And again, shiny object syndrome. Don't fall for all the traps in this AI automation space where there are a million different tools that all look super, super cool. Think about how a client would benefit from this tool, rather than thinking, oh, this tool is super cool, it can generate 300 different images in 500 different styles. Like, is a client really going to need that? That's the main question you got to ask. And if it's yes, I could apply it to this automation, brilliant. If it's no, don't try and fit it in because it's cool, right? You want to try build the leanest, simplest, amazing automation. People pay for results. They don't pay for cool tech. So you need to make sure you need to measure how much time or money that tool that you're using is going to save, and time equals money for most businesses. Always think about it in that frame of mind, and you'll go really far when starting an AI automation agency. Another hard lesson I really learned when we started our AI automation agency, Pluto AI, is this lesson over here. Know when manual intervention is necessary. Not everything should be 100% automated, and some steps do need human oversight and approval. This is just facts, right? To be completely honest with you. You can't automate everything, and sometimes business owners have a little bit of a skewed perception of what AI is capable of. You've got to be realistic with the tech we have in 2025, and then of course the tech's going to improve over time to 2028. Sometimes AI is just not very good at things, and you've just got to be honest with yourself that it's not. You can't sell an automation, and then if you do sell an automation, like one example is video generation, right? AI for a lot of business senses is not very good at creating videos for TikTok or anything else. Like, you can use HeyGen and some platforms like that, but there's a reason why I haven't automated a lot of my content, because you need a personal connection there. And I'm here for real, actually recording this video. I'm not an AI. And there's a reason why it's not automated, because it's just not great, right? It doesn't give the results you need. So you need to make sure that you can tell a client when the manual intervention is actually required, and be really upfront and honest with them. Don't try and say, and don't overestimate the abilities of what AI can do. There's a lot of hype in this space, and it is rightfully so. AI is going to change the world, and it is changing the world. I have no doubt about it. But it's more, you have to understand the limitations, especially in 2025. I'm sure it'll be very different in 2030, and maybe it will be able to automate way more tasks than it is now. But you need to know and be very careful about when you're talking to clients to tell them, okay, maybe creating this video or editing this video might need manual intervention. Oh yeah, it will generate a script for you, but I would highly recommend you have like a human step in here to just read over the script and skim it to make sure everything's okay. Yeah, we could upload these blog articles on auto-publish onto your WordPress site, but especially for the first 200 or 300 blogs, I'd highly recommend we can publish it to draft, and then you can take a look and edit any of the things you need. These are things you should be adding in when you're building out these automations, because like I said, it's way worse when something goes wrong down the line after you've built this automation and the business owner is screaming at you because it's wrong. This fortunately has never happened to me, but I've had it happen to other people. So you need to make sure you know when to add manual intervention. Awesome. So now that point's over the line, the next slide here is one of my favorites. You need to test everything and then test it again. Testing is your best friend when you're building out AI automations, especially on NA10 and Make.com. These are the two things we specialize in, and we really do build a lot of things on these two platforms. So this is why, and testing is really easy on both of them, quite honestly. Most automations fail because of unplanned edge cases. These are things you haven't considered might happen. And business processes are a lot more complex than the sandbox type solutions we build on YouTube and on TikTok that you might see on our channels. They typically have a lot more variability and a lot more randomness, but that's just real world, right? When we're building you a solution on YouTube or TikTok, it is an example of what you could build for a client, and it's very templated. But you need to personalize your automations to a client because there's always 100 different edge cases. I can tell you that from experience and dealing with so many different clients. And, we scaled to where we are because we plan for these edge cases. Error handlers are your best friends. Make.com and NAN both have error handlers, and you need to make sure you use them in every single automation. If you don't use error handlers, it kind of shows from like a mediocre intermediate automation expert to someone who's like actually a pro, and that is error handlers. You always need to add them in. You'll notice some of my automations on my channel have error handlers and some of them don't. You'll realize the ones that have error handlers are client automations that have been switched into, me making a video about them, and the ones that don't were purely made for content. So that's a good way to spot around my content, a little bit of an Easter egg. And what if the data input is wrong? So for example, if someone puts in a wrong type of data, how would that affect your automation? It should have some fallbacks for that, essentially. And you should test under real world conditions or emulate real world conditions before launch. And always offer a absolute minimum of 14-day free maintenance period. If you're starting out, I'd offer about 30 days because you really do need to make sure automations are great. We offer 14 now purely just because we've been building these automations for so long. We know how to do it and the process is great. But of course, if you're starting out, then do a 30-day free maintenance period and allow all the teething issues to, kind of kick in, and then see how you can adjust your automation to fix for those teething issues. This is a really important point to make sure your clients are really happy. So to conclude this video, one of the main things is automation is not, and I stress this, is not. Let me even adjust this. Hold up. Let me put this in. It's in bold, and I'm going to switch it. Let me switch this to bold over here. Perfect. There we go. Automation is not about fancy AI. It's about solving real business problems. The quicker you get that into your head, all this hype around AI, you need to see through it and cut through it. And you need to understand, okay, this new AI's come out, how can it solve real business problems? That's your first thing you should think about. OpenAI has released a new image model. How can that solve real business problems? And there should be hundreds of other things, you should really think about when a new AI tool comes out. You need to shift your mindset to focus on efficiency and simplicity rather than getting eaten into the hype. And you need to always provide ROI. Do not get the shiny object syndrome, and you will be okay. Your systems will be built amazingly. And there are hundreds of different gurus online that teach you how to build really cool automations, or, get you to how you can build parts of automation. You can string them all together, make something really cool for your client, right? But no one really talks about the sort of mindset when you're going into building automations for businesses. So that's why I made this video. I hope it was really useful, and I hope you learned something. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with it. It helps out a ton. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.